Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I welcome all the members of the committee. I'm Fred Bradshaw. I'm the chair. And we have substituting in for Nathaniel Teed is Mr. Trent Witherspoon as deputy chair.
No, he's not deputy chair. He's just.
I'm sorry. He is chitting in for Nathaniel Teed. We also have here Mr. Bonk. We have substituting in for Mr. Shettletayoff, Mr. Gowdy. We also have Mr. Doherty, Mr. Lawrence, and Mr. Steele. Committee members, today we'll be considering Bill number 89, the Income Tax Affordability Amendment Act, 2022. We'll begin our consideration with Clause 1, short title. Minister Halpower, could you please make your opening comments and introduce your officials? And I'd like to remind the officials when you first speak into the mic, could you state your name, please, for Hansard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have with me, to my right, the Deputy Minister, Max Hendricks. To my left is the Executive Director of the Taxation Branch, Scott Giroux. Behind me, I have the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Revenue Division Branch, Nancy Perez, and the Executive Director of the Communications Branch, Jeff Wilkie. The legislation we're discussing tonight implements the income tax initiatives that were announced on August 23, 2022, as part of the 4-point affordability plan for the 2023 first quarter financial report. Mr. Chair, the first initiative incorporates the Saskatchewan Affordability Tax Credit into provincial tax legislation. A one-time payment of $500 will be issued to all adult residents 18 years of age and older as of December 31st, 2022, who have filed a 2021 tax return. And, Mr. Chair, the second initiative extends the small business tax rate reduction for another year. The extension will maintain the small business rate at 0% retroactive to July 1st, 2022, and delay the restoration of the rate to 2% for another year. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any questions? Mr. Witherspoon?
Well, thanks, Madam Minister, and all the officials that are here tonight, all those that are involved in this this work. Just to back things up a little bit here, could you give us an update as to the timeline of these checks going out? It's my understanding that those would be into the mail likely next week, maybe sooner than that. I think that's been authorized. Maybe speak about how that's been authorized as well. I think that's the OC that would have been issued a few weeks back.
Correct. Your timeline's correct.
Okay, that sounds good. How did the great envelope shortage go? I heard there was a bit of a scramble there to get enough envelopes across ministries or government.
I haven't heard that.
Okay. Obviously, we've pushed hard for relief that people need and deserve during this extraordinary time, this affordability crisis that's really once in a generation for people and families and businesses, workers. And the government, of course, is in a fiscal position to provide relief, having our provincial revenues sent sky high as a result, of that, the inexcusable invasion in Ukraine. So obviously we've been down this road. We've debated these issues. We've been pushing for a long time to see dollars out the door and relief for people, both the one-time dollars, which we see here tonight, but in a meaningful, lasting, ongoing way, which we can get to. But I guess the thrust of our concern, we want to see dollars get to people. They need and deserve that support. We've made the entry in an earnest and in a constructive way that we think children should not be excluded from this rebate. We're hopeful that we could see some willingness here from you and your government to include children within this rebate. So I turn it over. I mean, it's a matter of fairness largely. You see, a wealthy, couple with no kids get 2 rebates. But we know a lot of folks, I think we can all think about the folks we represent. We know a lot of folks that are working awfully hard at times when, one parent or grandparent often with 3 or 4 or 5 kids and doing everything they can, just to keep some food in the fridge and the lights on. So I guess I reach out in good faith on this. Can we work together to include children in this program?
With the existing allocation, that would mean basically stop payment and to recalculate, if that's what the member is suggesting, and in which case it would be a lesser check to more people is perhaps what he's suggesting. I would like to remind the member that his party had suggested that the check should be $105 to everyone. Most family configurations, a $500 check will be more money than what they would get with $105 per person within that family configuration. There is consideration to children in a number of programs and the expense of raising a child, such as we have the largest child exemption within our income tax system in the country. We recognize income levels in children when we have the low income tax credit. There is, of course, the federal active or the federal benefit that goes to that it calculates each and every child within the family. We have provincially initiated the active families benefit. We also, as a government, brought in the child prescription drug plan to help with those costs for families. And we have significantly reduced the child care fees and will continue to do so. So a lot of expenses involved to children is covered or subsidized by the provincial government. And of course, there is, as I pointed out, the federal government payments. The large thing driving the inflation, of course, is fuel costs, and the people that are incurring those fuel costs largely are adults.
A family uses a lot of fuel. You think of rural Saskatchewan and just getting to kids' activities and getting to school and getting to the doctor, those costs are big. They're big in the city as well. And the fuel costs as well are stacked into the huge spike we've seen in food costs. And if you get to those grocery stores and, we've got a smaller family ourselves, we know what that increase looks like for us. But if you've got a family of 4 or 5 or 6 kids in a household, it's hard right now. And the stress that folks are, incurring is real. I guess the minister, I feel, sets up a bit of a false dichotomy here around that payments need to be, that checks need to be canceled, and that it's not possible to include children. Of course, that's just not the case. We have the ability here to extend additional resources. We've got, a projected $1 billion surplus at this point in time, and we have the ability to add children. And this was initially authorized through an OC. Of course, dollars going out, checks going out aren't impeded by any of our deliberations here. It's not our desire and it's not our intent, and it won't be our actions to slow the progress of this bill, but we do want to fix it and improve it. So just back to the minister, does she have willingness to add children? And yes, that would mean, as opposed to the sum that's been allocated through the OC, that there'd have to be an additional set of dollars to make sure that families see the additional dollars there. But does she have willingness to work with us on this front?
So I'm hearing that because there isn't the amount of money that you are saying there is. So you're saying that we do not reduce the debt. Something that I've heard you speak to numerous times, of how you are appalled by the debt, and yet we committed to reduce that debt by $1 billion. That no longer has any interest to you?
The debt's not being reduced, of course, this year. The debt's increasing this year, just as it has year after year under your government. Of course, it's tripled over during the tenure of your government, and so even to suggest that this $1 billion, this amount that is referenced, I mean, in the end, that's it's less than the overrun on that bypass. So, what we have resources here this year, and people are in a position where they need some relief. And to shut out kids isn't fair, and the families that are enduring those impacts and those stresses at this time. So yes, we would call for some additional resources to be brought to bear. Of course, it's a fraction of the full program that's going out, but it's a matter of fairness, and it's a matter of proper support for families. So we would call for some additional spending on this front to make sure that we're addressing, a real challenge for households. And when we talk about debt, obviously we need to get, our province back on track in a fiscally sustainable way, in a responsible way. That's critically important. But when we're talking about debt, we have to think about all of those families that are being indebted right now that can't make the bills at the end of the month. And when we have a program like this that's extended, with relief that's needed and deserved, it should be done in a fair and equitable way. The consequence of not properly supporting some of those families that are working so damned hard to just pay the bills but not able to make ends meet is leaving them in further debt, leaving many with limited options on this front from a housing perspective, from the basic needs of their children, and leaving them going to find that debt. And many of those families that are living close on the margins, working hard to scrape by, they're not going to get debt from a credit line from a bank or credit union, often at a low rate. They're into these places that are often really predatory with the costs as well, and it creates a vicious cycle for low-wage, hardworking families. So yes, we're calling on the minister to work together to provide some additional resources and ensure some fairness and inclusion of the cost of raising children.
So first and foremost, I need to correct the member when he said that we were not writing down debt this fiscal year. That is indeed false information. We are actually retiring $1 billion of debt, along with the fact that because of the revenues that we have at this point in time, we will not be borrowing $700 million that we had projected that we would need to borrow when we introduced the budget. So that actually reduces the debt from what was projected in the budget by $1.7 billion. $1 billion of that is an actual breakdown of existing debt, giving us a savings annually on interest payments of a little over $50 million, which will help in other pressures in other areas that's important to the province in healthcare, education, and social safety nets. The member opposite is alluding that this is just a mere few little dollars more that supposedly is available, when they've also asked for dollars for a number of areas, in particular in education, in healthcare, which we've committed in both of those areas, but never enough for the members opposite. He talks about the devastation of debt, and yet they have continuous asks of substantive money in almost every area in government, with no idea how that would be paid for. So at this point in time, I would say that no, we're not considering and making any changes to this program.
I would just say it's really unfortunate. We've reached out in good faith on this front, and we have an opportunity. We have an extraordinary time. It's very rare. Here we are at Remembrance Day, and we got a war going on in Europe. That wasn't supposed to happen again. And there's direct consequences for this province. Revenues for the province are through the roof. And for the people of Saskatchewan, it's serious hardship. But it's sort of the same old, it seems, as we approach, the work around this place. And that's unfortunate. The dollars should have been extended earlier to families. We're pleased to see dollars going out. We saw this as an opportunity to make some improvements and ensure equity and ensure some fair support for families in the province. So I'm disappointed, not surprised. I'd continue to implore the minister to act on this front. I'm looking at my good colleagues opposite, not pushing you on the spot or anything here right now, but I know you know the situation that your constituents are facing, and I know you can do the math on how these dollars are distributed. And we need to get these dollars out the door, but families need it. They need it now. And to exclude children, in my view, is wrong. I guess my question to the minister, does she think it's fair to have a situation where a wealthy couple with 2 children will receive 2 rebates, but a working parent with a low wage, with 3, 4, 5 children will get one rebate? Does she see that as a fair and equitable program?
I'll reinstate that we have a number of programs to help those families with children that families without children don't have. So, I mean, we can debate which programs are fair, which programs are not fair. What's very interesting is that the member is alluding that they've been cooperative and working with us from all along, when in fact we announced this program the end of August, and they waited till the checks went to print before they came forward with this request. So I find that rather interesting. And yes, they did state that they would, if they ever have the opportunity to be government, would issue $105 to each and every one in the province. But it is still, in most family configurations, less than what we have with our program. So he can continue to go down this path, but I have stated, and I'm not changing that we are standing by the program as we introduced it.
Okay, I don't want to get into like a partisan, goofy debate, man. Families need better from all of us. The facts as are being presented don't line up with reality. We've spoken from day one at budget time that children also needed and deserved a dividend. We spoke out when the program, we urged all the way through August, July on this front as well. And when the program was announced in August, we were very clear that children needed to be included as well. That's part of public entries, news release, public advocacy, including back into this assembly. Setting all that aside, even if this was the very first day this was raised, which it wasn't, it's been a consistent effort from the start, what would be wrong with making an improvement to a program? We hear that's not the case. As far as aspersions around what the NDP would be doing right now and what amount that would be is also not correct. We were making a push at budget time to get dollars out the door to families, a cost of living dividend or rebate, as we see here today. That would include children based on that current situation, because people needed support then as well. We were pushing the other measures, of course, around fuel tax relief with the suspension, which was voted against. The stay on the power and energy hikes that we see, the scrapping of the nonsensical new taxes that have been brought about. But I'm not going to get into all of that, because people deserve better than a partisan or back and forth on these fronts. I'm disappointed that there's not a willingness here tonight to look at children. We'll keep pushing, because it's not right going into winter here right now as folks are going out there trying to get boots on kids and trying to have food in the freezer with all of the costs that are there, that they are not extended some relief and support in a fair and equitable way. I'd like to get to just a couple more technical questions around the bill right now. Could you lay out just the allocation of funds and the number of planned recipients, and then what your latest forecasts are as far as the number of recipients? We know that there'll be some folks that using just the tax record itself, for example, will not be fully inclusive of all people in the province. So I'm just looking at that estimate as to what you're currently forecasting as far as the number of people that will be receiving rebates.
Approximately 825,000 checks will be issued over the first 3 weeks, as of 3 weeks of November.
So then the total cost from the 825,000, what's the current updated number on the total cost?
So that is the 825,000 checks is the first run. We expect to have a total of 900,000 checks, which is $450 million.
And are you expecting like a full 900,000, or are you expecting that number will drop a bit, and just knowing that the tax record will be incomplete with respect to the number of people in Saskatchewan within that defined age group?
So we've encouraged people, of course, to file in order to access not just this, but there are, a number of programs that they then will get funds from should they file their income tax. So we're anticipating it will be the 900,000.
And what's the deadline for someone if they haven't filed their taxes? What's the deadline for them to file to be included in the rebate?
October 31st.
Has there been any campaign or effort or resources extended throughout the community, directly as the ministry, or in supporting CBOs and not-for-profits that work with some of the most marginalized to ensure that they're, filed those taxes and able to be part of the system and benefit from the rebate?
There's been public awareness that this is the program and that that individuals would need to file. There has been social workers, of course, are well aware of this, as well as CBOs have been well aware of it.
The concern that's been expressed by some, say some of the those that represent some of the most marginalized, those dealing with serious poverty and many challenges, is that they will be likely excluded in the way that this is organized. Could the minister speak to, I guess, the choice to not reconcile with other lists of government? For example, a reconciliation that respects privacy, of course, but with the health records, for example.
So health doesn't allow us to access any of their information. It is against the HIPAA laws. Yeah.
Was there any effort to see if there was a way to access other records government has to do a reconciliation on this front in a way that protects privacy, of course, whether that be health or other records of government? I'm just trying to, get my mind around how do you make sure that you're being as inclusive as a government can be with the recipients on this front, and not shutting out some of the folks that are, dealing often with some pretty difficult lives and some of the most vulnerable.
I mean, such as what?
Such as
information from where?
Right. So that's the question to you. Did you work with the Privacy Commissioner? Did you reach out to Health to see what kind of way that record? Of course, it would have taken likely a little bit more work or effort, but I suspect there's a way that we could have respected and protected HIPAA and the Privacy Act and made sure we got support out to the most, reconciled in a way that made sure that folks weren't being shut out.
Max Hendricks, Deputy Minister. So as the former Deputy of Health, this was one of the things that I raised with my staff, but obviously, as the Minister has already said, according to the Health Information Protection Act, there isn't legislative authority for us to use that file to issue this type of payment. Even if we were to, people are good at updating their information, their personal information for certain types of things, but every 3 or 4 years when we send out renewals for the health card, approximately 43,000 people haven't updated their address. And so, honestly, if you're a person, that unfortunately was homeless or something, we don't know where that check will go, or it'll probably be returned. So we felt the best mechanism to reach people was to use their income tax information to encourage people to file their income tax, giving them a window to October 31st to do that. And then, as the minister said, having social services and CBOs provide assistance to those individuals, not only so they can access this $500, but other programs as well that could assist them.
And sorry, the deadline for filing taxes, I think you touched on this already, and you just mentioned it now, just to make sure I heard it properly. The deadline to file is?
First.
So it's passed at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any thought to, if we want to get the full subscription, to the program, the 900,000, if we want to get it to, as many people as we can within this criteria, is there any thought to extending that at all, and then working possibly with CBOs and others that are supporting folks to get their taxes filed?
I've had no CBO reach out to my office, to my knowledge, that has said that they feel that they needed an extension.
What sort of measures are in place to ensure that the dollars get to those that need it, and to Saskatchewan residents, if someone left the province for other opportunity or work? We've seen a number of that this last year, sadly. How do we make sure that, I guess, a check from the province isn't going to that person that may have moved to Alberta or BC a number of months ago?
So the information that we have to work with is what their address was as of December 31st, according to their income tax, which would be a Saskatchewan resident address.
Okay, so December 31st of last year.
Yeah.
So if someone moved in January to BC, they're going to be getting a check, which doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
If their address for a number of months has been outside of Saskatchewan, it was mailed to their previous Saskatchewan address, the check would be returned.
Okay, and so I know if someone receives it and it gets forwarded along to wherever they are, otherwise I guess they'd be in a position to cash that check. There's not any other safeguards or checks and balances on this front?
Nancy Para, Revenue Division. So the question was if they live outside of the province, if they've moved outside of the province. So we will issue the check, it will come back returned. And if we don't have an updated address, they won't have an opportunity to cash that check.
In the situation where a check goes to a mailbox and, maybe arrives to a spot, and if let's say someone's past roommates are there, if they sent it out to wherever they've gone off to Alberta or BC or something, it would then be able to be cashed by that person. Is that correct? Or is there another check and balance we can have to prevent checks going? I mean, we don't want people moving out of the province. We gotta stop that flow. But we should also make sure right now when, that we don't have dollars then going outside the province with those that have moved.
We established the process for mailing with the print vendor. We ask that the checks do not be forwarded. So every check will have a do not forward on it. They will come back to our ministry.
Maybe just a couple questions on the small business extension. So the total fiscal impact of this extension or of this program, so it's retroactive and then it goes forward to into 2023.
0.6 million
For the full...
for the fiscal year.
For this fiscal year.
Yeah.
And what is it for the entire period that's...
100 and 93.1.
93.1. So this fiscal year then is 30,
0.6, 23, 24 would be 43.5, and 24, 25 will be 19.
and the extension of 0% ends at which point?
It would end, it's for this fiscal year, so that's 2 years of zeros, then it goes to 1%, and then it goes back to 2.
Okay. And can you speak about just the some of the other adjustments that occur as well around the income tax side here, just to correspond to the reduction with respect to the small business tax rate?
Hi, Scott Giroux from the Ministry of Finance. So the other corresponding change that we have is a change to the dividend tax credit. So that's an element, a component of the tax system that's meant to prevent double taxation. So as essentially the tax rate or the tax paid by an individual, there's adjustments made to make sure that it's similar, whether it's taken as employment income or dividends from a corporation. So as the corporate tax rate changes, there's corresponding changes to the dividend tax credit rate. So that will, when the rate goes back up to 2% in July of 2024, the DTC rate will go back to its previous rate.
And that's the whole concept of that the dollars that you're pulling, that you're trying to keep things whole as far as the dollars that the taxation that would apply to the dollars that are being pulled from the company at that point.
It's keeping the level of taxation similar at the individual
Right.
level. So within the corporation, it will change, but when it gets, the idea is when it flows to the individual, it would be similar.
Yeah. And part of this as well, would that be possibly a bit of an encouragement for a company to invest a bit as a company as well, maybe invest in some equipment or as an option as opposed to just pulling that dividend as well?
Sorry. Theoretically, it could, and each and every business, of course, will make those decisions, but theoretically, it should encourage businesses to invest either in expansion of their business or more employees or something.
Thanks again. I don't think I have any further questions at this point. I appreciated the technical briefing we had earlier as well. I know we can't speak of any of the contents of that exchange. I would urge the minister, and the call I would leave stands. We can do this all over again tomorrow, and we can include, we can have a program that extends to children. The checks are going out the door right now. The stamps have been licked. I don't know who did all that work, but that's a lot of stamps. Sore tongue. But it's a matter of fairness on the children, and I would reach out in good faith, and I look at my good, fellow members opposite. They've got a voice in all this over on your side as well. It's not fair and it's not right to deny the support for families that are dealing with such exorbitant costs of living right now, and it's just not right to extend resources in a way that like we say, go to a couple with, a wealthy couple, two rebates, but, someone out there grinding and working so hard, often 2 jobs, 3 jobs. I see this with my constituents. I know these folks will see it with many of theirs as well. 3 and 4 kids, working so hard to put clothing on those kids, but then 1 rebate here. So when we're extending resources, it really should be a matter of equity. And the hardship that folks are facing that are working so hard right now and working to extend care for their families real. So our call stands, and we're ready to work together in an expedited way. We can meet later tonight, tomorrow morning, whenever we can get a bill and an OC, and we can make this happen, and we'll help lick the stamps. We'll stuff envelopes with the members opposite and help get those out the door. But I'm quite disappointed that there wasn't a willingness to incorporate children into this program here tonight. We're not going to stand in the way of the dollars getting out the door. We had hoped to fix and improve this program and ensure equity and fairness. We'll continue that push and call. But otherwise, I want to thank the minister for her time here tonight. Our call stands. My phone's ready. If we're ready to go on getting dollars out to children in a fair way, or to families, I should say, we'll be ready to work on a moment's notice. And thank you to the officials that are here tonight and all those involved in this work.
Well, are there any more questions from the committee? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote on the clauses. Clause 1, short title. Is that agreed? Carried. Clause 2. Is that agreed? Carried. Clause 3. Is that agreed? Carried. Clause 4. Is that agreed? Carried. Clause 5. Is that agreed? Carried. Clause 6. Is that agreed? Carried. Clause 7. Coming into force. Is that agreed? Carried. Her Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan, enacts as follows: the Income Tax Affordability Amendment Act 2022.
This clause right here.
Right there. I would ask a member to move that we report Bill number 89, the Income Tax Affordability Amendment Act 2022, without amendment. Mr. Steele so moves. Is that agreed? Carried. That concludes our business for today.
Ask if the minister has any comments.
Yeah. Minister, do you have any closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to thank all of the committee members for being here tonight, and to all of the officials that have assisted us in answering questions and support of every day throughout the year of the Ministry of Finance. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon, do you have any closing comments?
I want to thank you for being such a fair chair, Mr. Chair, and to committee members. And again, just thanks to the minister. I hope you've heard our call in earnest. It's constructive. We're ready to work. People need some support. And thank you so much to all the officials that are here tonight.
And I would like to thank all the committee members and the minister and her officials and everybody for being here. I also want to thank Hansard. So thank you very much. I will now ask a member to move adjournment. Mr. Steele so moves. Is that agreed? Carried. This committee stands adjourned until December the 10th, 2022 at 1:15.